Everybody enjoys a Power Cat these days for their extra space and efficiency and ride softness and stability. And we're down in Cannes today where there are a couple from Jeanneau. The first of them is this, the Jeanneau TH38. That is a day boat essentially with the potential to do a bit of weekending. But we're going to look at the larger sibling. We're going to concentrate on this, the TH38, a weekender that they tell me can turn its hand very nicely to a bit of authentic cruising. Now, as ever, the first thing to talk about with a Power Cat is the beam, because essentially that's what differentiates it in many ways from a monohull. Now, what we have here with the TH38 is a boat that measures 38 foot 9 inches in length and 13 feet 11 inches in the beam, which is about 36% of the overall length. And that is not actually huge at all by Power Cat standards. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that's used, particularly as you can see we've got a pair of side decks and a step-through screen. So a really interesting way to use the space. But let's start at the back end, because that is particularly interesting. Now, as you can see, we've got a twin rig of 350s here, which should be good for around about 34 knots. You can also go for a pair of 300s, which should take you to about 31 knots, so not a huge difference there. But what's particularly interesting here, if I just pop round the flag and look sideways, is we've got space, because of that relatively generous beam, for small fixed platforms on either side of those outboards. Plus, if I step across, a nice big central platform as well, with a ladder beneath its hatch, which is currently deployed down into the water. But because it extends so far aft between these engines, it kind of operates like a Pasarella as well as a swim platform. So it's a really practical feature, that. And what I particularly like back here is the furniture. Now, as you can see, what we have here is a dinette, a C-shaped dinette rigged in the center of the deck, but that's on runners, so you can slide these to either side and open up this entire central walkway all the way from this aft platform right the way forward to that bow lounge. Really lovely and open. Now, we don't have the telescopic legs here, so we can't drop these tables into that space. But it is an option to do so, in which case you can turn this entire space into a nice big sunbed. But because, of course, these slide sideways, you can shift them to the periphery. Again, open up that big walkway. You can turn them into a sunbed. You can leave one as a seating zone for dining. So it really is a flexible way to organise the space. And if you do slide these units to the side, you'll see here that we've got some quite clever rails just secured into the deck there. But you can, of course, just lift these up. Simple as that, and relocate them into these little receptacles in the deck on each side deck there, so that when you've rigged it with a central dinette or a central sunbed, again, you've got protection for your children when you're underway. We'll leave these seating units in the centre though, because it exposes these side decks, which is quite useful for our purposes. So, as you can see, over on this port side deck, we've got a good hatch beneath the deck. We've got a little locker in the seating unit itself, and that's a dedicated locker for your life raft. Got a good bit of space down here for storage of bulky items, fenders, whatever you like. And also, of course, if you spec an electric stove or you need a generator, then this is the place where you'd pop it. As you can see, if we look slightly further forward, the raised mouldings to create the volume for the cabins down below, one in each hull, stops with those little white mouldings there. So everything after this is basically volume inside the hull, which is available for your various bits of optional engineering kit. Well, let's step into the cockpit itself. Head round to the starboard side, because again, we have that locker beneath the deck, but this time, because of course the port seating unit takes care of the life raft duties. If we open this up, if I can get it open, that is, there we are. You'll see we've got an absolutely enormous locker in there. The entire L-shaped unit is completely hollow. So loads of volume, very handy indeed. And if you come further forward again into the cockpit, well, you'll see that there's some handy asymmetry further forward. We've got an aft facing seat here on the starboard side, just inboard of that side deck, big enough for 2 people, or a good sort of shape actually, because of this corner section for people to lounge, sort of lie down like a chaise longue. It's very sociable indeed, that. And on the port side we have the wet bar, or most of the wet bar, because it's actually split. If we look behind that seat we just looked at, we've got a bit of work surface there, plus a really generous size of fridge. I think we've got another fridge in here, yeah, and a good bit of volume in there as well. You can obviously have an ice maker if you choose. Here's a single gas ring on this particular test boat, though as I've mentioned, you can also have electric if you prefer, and multiple rings, and a really good size of sink there. Feels pretty well built too, and I like the fact that we got handles on all sides and cup holders for making your way fore and aft, popping your cups away, although as you can see that's not drained. And if we look in here, there's a little light just to give you some ambient glow inside these cup holders, and it's kind of offset to port a touch. Tiny thing, but I pop my cup in there and it's kind of wonky and spilling all over the place, so that's not ideal. In any case, if we move further forward, and again this is an absolutely huge walkway, easily enough for somebody to work at the galley while still keeping enough space for people to move fore and aft. And we'll just scoot past the helm for now, past the symmetrical access points down those steps to the 2 cabins, and through this very lofty screen. As you can see, if I move slightly further back, there's a little section here, so you can lift this section and close up the screen and still have a little bit of air diverted down into the cockpit and onto the skipper. And here is our bow section, which is always particularly impressive on a cat, and it's no difference here. There's a good bit of beam forward, and I reckon there's easily enough space for 8 people here, though they quote 10. This uses the same tables as we have aft, so you can relocate them forward if you like. And there's space for a couple of tables too. There's various ways to configure it, and you can of course, again, if you opt for it, turn this entire space into a sunbed. And it's deep too, particularly secure. And unlike a monohull, this is a place you'd happily come and sit, because of course you've got the inherent stability of twin hulls, so it feels a lot more secure and sturdy when you're at sea. We also have a speaker built in here, plus a power point and a couple of cup holders, the same on either side, and some good storage capacity in here as well. And this under the deck is quite interesting while we're talking about storage. Now, on a cat, particularly a modern power cat, a great many of them use the space between the hulls for a stoop-in bridge deck that enables you to expand the accommodation between the hulls, but of course that lowers the clearance above the water, so you often get impacts. Well, no such thing here. We got a nice raised bridge deck, plenty of clearance, but we still have, if I open this up, a little wave breaker, a little V-shaped moulding underneath that bridge deck, such that when you do get a bit of an impact, it's softened. It doesn't just slam and cause the boat to shudder. And that's nicely used here for a little bit of storage for your fenders. It makes good sense. But while we're here, let's just pop up onto the port side deck for a little look. Now, it's a perfectly legitimate question to say, when you've got a step through screen, why have side decks as well? Because of course it minimises the beam available to the internal saloon there. And the answer is very simple. A great many of these boats expect to be moored stern to at Mediterranean marinas, where you've got to fetch a line and walk it to the bow to tie off there. So this makes all of that a great deal simpler. And in any case, when we step into the saloon, as you can see, there's plenty of beam available. It feels pretty spacious. But while these guys are playing around with the helm, let's pop further forward and step down into the porthole. Let's turn on some lights as well while we're at it. Completely symmetrical, these cabins. So you come down to a little bit of cabinetry and along this slightly shallow hull window. More cabinetry down below, and we look aft towards a double bed beneath the mouldings for that galley on the port side. And it's pretty lofty, I have to say. The deck head does look quite complex. It dips and raises in all sorts of ways. But there is space even inboard to sit up in bed by that reading light. Compact little port light aft looks onto the cockpit deck. A little bit of extra ventilation and light. And there is the potential, you might think, for storage beneath the bed, but not so, because we've got an air conditioning unit beneath there and another one in the starboard hull. And if we look in here, we got a bit of trunking for that there. But if we look inboard, well, we got some proper dedicated storage spaces there. So it's not too bad at all in that regard. And what I also like is the fact that if I open this up and look forward, what we have in here is a separate shower compartment. You've got about 6'1" of standing headroom there. So for many people, it's easier just to sit down and use that seat, but plenty of space for that. We also got a separate toilet, a decent size of vanity unit, and a bit more natural light and ventilation from that hatch up onto the foredeck. You don't necessarily expect a heads compartment of this kind of calibre on a relatively compact power cat, so I'm quite impressed with this. As for the cabin on the starboard side, well, as you can see, completely symmetrical. So really, it makes no odds which of these cabins you choose. Both are perfectly acceptable, you'd say, for fairly extended weekends away. And if we pop up top and take a look at the helm position, well, that's also quite pleasant. More pleasant, you'd have to say, than the co-pilot position. This sits slightly further forward because, of course, we've got a larger galley section on the port side than we do to starboard. So there's more fore and aft space here for the skipper. The co-pilot seat, which is just about big enough for two cosy people, I think, comes with a nice little foot brace. But if you fold this down and sit yourself in there, as you can see, there's no travel to go further aft. You do find yourself slightly bunched up. But we do get a grab rail, we do get a couple of cup holders, and if I move into that position, I perch myself against the bolster, you do get really very good visibility indeed. It also feels good to the skipper to have the companion seat in position just a little further forward of him. It just feels slightly more sociable. And as for the skipper's position itself, well, as you can see, we've got no side screens here. These are open, so it's perfectly easy for you to reach over and operate the rails, although we do have some quite unusual panels of perspex built into those grab rails, which do create a bit of rattling when you're at sea, and they do kind of get in the way if you're trying to operate lines on these rails. Nonetheless, the dash itself is quite nicely arranged. We've got a pair of 12-inch plotters and an engine display in the centre, some manual switch gear, the stereo remote, and some ventilation outlets there, plus twin throttles and your joystick over by the right arm, and this makes a very natural ledge to rest your arm indeed. It's very comfortable, plus a couple of cup holders again, and a skipper seat with a bolster and a pair of armrests. So I do find, and I've seen this on Jeanneau's in the past, that this little headrest bit here comes just down around about your shoulder blades and kind of pushes your back forward a touch, hunches you over more than you might want to be. So I'm not particularly a fan of that, but the ergonomics feel very good indeed. And again, the visibility here is excellent. And just as you can reach the rails to the side of you, where your access to the bow could hardly be better, and your access to these side decks is equally good, particularly as we also have a side gate on the starboard side there for you to reach the pontoon itself. As for these big old lofty screens that go all the way up and join directly, integrate with that roof structure, well, this is an optional configuration, and that really is a big old slab of fiberglass. There's no option to spec any sunroofs of any kind, because they're very conscious of putting too much weight up top. They want to preserve the integrity of the handling, keep it nice and safe and secure and novice friendly. But you can, of course, spec it with solar panels on the roof and opt for a lithium battery bank if you enjoy that idea. And if you prefer, you can just go with something simpler, like this T-top that we see on the TH38, or leave it as an entirely open boat altogether. The choice is yours. Well, if that port co-pilot seat is a little bit tight in terms of your legroom ahead of the main part of the galley, things are much better ergonomically over here on the starboard side. We just set a little bit further aft. We've got more in the way of travel for the skipper's seat. We've got an adjustable wheel as well, so you can make yourself really very comfortable. Perch yourself against that foot brace We got a couple of 12-inch plotters. The compass on the top of the dash there is quite a reflective dash surface, but we do have some nice manual switchgear down there, plus a couple of vents. So I've got no complaints there at all. And actually, in the sitting position as well, we're just sufficiently elevated, in spite of the fact that this dash is quite raised, that we still retain really good visibility. So what we want to do, of course, particularly given that we got the top rated twin 350s on this particular boat, is get her underway and have a little play. So we'll do that right now. We'll put her on single lever and we'll take active trim off so we can have a play ourselves. And we'll trim her in and we'll get ourselves underway and see how we go. And of course, as you'd expect as a catamaran, the first thing you notice when you get her just underway a little bit is the fact that the directional tracking is really very good. I mean, right enough, we got a bit of a beam sea washing through us here, a couple of feet, which is making us rock around a little bit, but we're still dead centered. No messing around with this wheel to keep you nice and steady down the channel. And if we just put the hammers down and trim her up a little, well, we're hitting 20 knots already, which is not bad at all. But I am tempted to kind of shout. I don't need to, of course, because we've got a microphone right here under my mouth. But the fact of the matter is that this big old roof structure, it does trap a little bit of the noise. It does reverberate a little bit. We're seeing at the higher end of the cruising band decibel readings right up in the mid to high 80s, so that's pretty substantial. A bit too much, you might say, to conduct a natural chat with the people on the co-pilot seat when you're on a longer passage. But of course that improves if we ease her back. And so of course there's fuel efficiency. Now as a cat you expect a decent bit of fuel efficiency, and with these twin 350s, what we're basically seeing that every sensible speed up to around about 25 knots is 5 litres per nautical mile. And we got about 870 litres of fuel capacity, so 700 litres to play with. So we're looking at a range in the region of 140 miles, which is absolutely fine. There is talk, of course, as you'd expect, of a power cat, of a hydrofoil in the future, just to ease up those revs, ease back that fuel flow and just free the holes up a little bit. But that's not available yet. It'll be interesting to see how she drives when it is. In the meantime, let's put some pace on again, because we can, because I'm beautifully protected here. Simmer out to 30% or so. Just get past this little marker buoy on our starboard side and we'll swing her down to starboard. Still got about 30% trim on. As she caught us lovely and flat, I can trim her in a little more, get a little bit more grip, dial out a little bit of that slip, and then you get a few extra G's. But either way, as we go through our own wake here, well, the ride softness is exactly as you'd have it from a power cat, particularly one where the accommodation is inside the respective holes. So we got a nice elevated bridge deck, good clearance from the water surface. I know it's not absolutely a thrill ride by sporting monohull standards, but given how much it offers in terms of deck space, configurable deck space like that, both forward and aft, it puts in a really very decent performance indeed. That then is a really very easy boat to enjoy, and that's exactly what Jeanneau intended with this. Whether you're a novice or whether you're more accustomed to monohulls, this is the kind of boat you can step on board and enjoy right from day one. Yeah, it's a bit noisy and a bit rattly underway, and it's not going to set your world alight with its outright performance, but it handles a treat, and there's all kinds of configurable furniture for you to play with both in the cockpit and the bow. So in many ways it does exactly what you'd want from a modern 38-foot power cat. Now, whether you agree with that or not, please do leave your comments in the section below. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button, and if you want to see more videos like this in the future, then make sure you subscribe to the Motorboat and Yachting channel.